Good morning, BT.Church family. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for watching with us from wherever you may be today. Again, if it's your first time watching with us today, you are a VIP. We're so thankful to have you with us today. If you haven't already done so, please text us at 97,000 and include the word BTVIP, all one word. So glad that you are with us today. I hope, again, that everyone is doing well. Last week was interesting. And so I hope that you are doing well after the storm. Please know that if you have need of some help at your home with some, whether it's clearing out fallen trees or if you had water damage, please contact us as we would love to be able to come and assist. We are hosting a disaster relief team from the Southern Baptist of Texas Convention, and we could mobilize them and some of our own church family to help you out in this situation. Because of last weekend and so many people without power, you may not have been able to see the service. I do encourage you to get online and to catch up. We are continuing our series called God's Playlist today, and we're going to be in the 23rd Psalm. So if you have your Bible, go there, pull it up on your device. Last week, we actually started the 23rd Psalm, and while originally when I was working on this series, I planned to preach the 23rd Psalm all in one weekend, 2 weeks ago as I was preparing, the Lord just caused me to keep hitting a speed bump, if you will. I kept hitting a barrier, and so after praying about it, decided that we were going to take the 23rd Psalm, and we were going to do it over 3 weeks. And I gave this illustration, as we make our own playlists today, maybe Spotify's what you use, is what I use, and you make a playlist, but every once in a while you come across a song, and it's just so good that you put it on repeat, right? You put it on repeat because you want to make sure you get the message. You just want to listen to it again and again. Maybe you want to make sure you learn the lyrics. That was my story in 1990 as I committed to memory and still have it treasured in my heart today, every word from the classic song, Ice Ice Baby. And so that's what we're doing with Psalm 23, though. We are putting it on repeat because the bottom line is it is just that good. And I believe that it's so appropriate for where we are. I thought that on the front end when the Lord had me slow down, when all we were dealing with was a pandemic. And then we ended up adding a hurricane to the mix. And I'm thankful for the time that we are spending here in this powerful passage. Today, we're going to look at only one verse. We opened up last week with verses 1 through 3, talking about God's provision for us, the way He restores us and leads us. And again, if you missed that sermon, catch it online. But today, we're only going to look at verse 4 as we continue to talk about the good news of the Good Shepherd. I'm going to go ahead and read the entire 23rd Psalm just so we can work on familiarizing ourselves with it and committing it to memory. This is what the Psalm says in the CSB version. It says, "The Lord is my shepherd, I have what I need." Again, a lot of us are familiar with it saying, "I shall not want," but I love the way it's put here, "I have what I need. I don't lack anything. He lets me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He renews my life. He leads me along the right paths for His name's sake. Even when I go through the darkest valley, I fear no danger, for You are with me. Your rod and Your staff, they comfort me." Our key text for today. Verse 5, "You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Only goodness and faithful love will pursue me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." Amen. A few things before I get to the points today that I want to make sure you notice is that in verses 1 through 3, we see David talking about God, seemingly talking to an audience. He's taught, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He lets me lie down in green pastures, and He leads me beside quiet waters." He's talking about God. However, here in verse 4, there's a shift in his perspective. He's not talking about God any longer. He's talking with God and to God. This shepherd who is near to him, he has turned his attention towards Him, forgetting the audience that he may have once addressed. And so as David talks to God in this popular verse, maybe one of the most well-known in the Bible, I want to point out two things today that's good news about our good shepherd, specifically when we go through the valley of darkness, or as many of us learned it, the valley of the shadow of death. 2 points today about how good our shepherd is, even in those times. Here's the first thing. If you're taking notes, I want you to write this down. The first point is that the shepherd is with us. The shepherd is with us in the valley. Again, in what is one of the most well-known verses of Scripture, David says, to the Lord. Even though I go through the darkest valley, you are with me. I fear no danger, or again, as many of us learned it, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Beloved, hear me today. This is the truth. In this life, you will either go to the valley of darkness without a shepherd, or you will go through it with one. That's all there is to it. We all go through valleys, dark nights of the soul. And you will either go to those without the shepherd, or you will go through those with the shepherd. Today, a lot of us find ourselves feeling like we're in a valley, right? Let's not pretend. A lot of us feel like we're in the valley of shadows. We're in the darkest of valleys. Maybe it's COVID. Maybe it's after effects from last week's hurricane. Maybe it's a rise in our stress level. It's increased anxiety and despair. Maybe it's financial strain from COVID and the storm and everything in between. Maybe it's relational strain. Maybe it's the chains of addictions coming back up in the midst of this pandemic. You feel isolated and you turn back to the substance, back to that pornography online to try to numb the pain that you're dealing with. Maybe you've lost loved ones. Maybe you have issues before any of these things became a reality. And the bottom line is we find ourselves in the valley. But understand this, beloved, if you have trusted Jesus as your Savior, He is with you in the valley. He is going to lead you through the valley. In fact, He is not only with you, don't miss this, He was there before you. Don't forget this. Long before COVID became a reality, Jesus was in the pandemic. Long before the hurricane made landfall, Jesus was in the midst. He's not just with us, He goes before us. You see, it would be uncommon for a shepherd, particularly in this time, to lead his flock to a place he had not been, where he didn't know the terrain, didn't know the dangers, didn't know where food supplies would be. The shepherd, a good shepherd, would not lead his sheep to a place he had not already been. And Jesus will never lead us to a place He hasn't been Himself. He goes before us, He is with us, and He never leaves us. Our church has taken several mission trips to Honduras. In 2018, I was on one of those trips, and one of the days of that trip, we had a play day, a free day, if you will. We went to this beautiful waterfall, and there were a few options of recreation that day. You could zip line over the falls. You could sit around and watch the falls, or you could take this cave tour behind the falls. And I think you see a picture of the waterfall. It was beautiful, huge. And so a few of us, I think there was 5 of us, we decided we would do the cave tour. Now, I'm an American, and unfortunately, I tend to think like an American. So when I hear a cave tour behind this raging waterfall, I envision paved walkways with lights and handrails, and you get there and you take your pictures and you're dry. Well, as we began to get ready for our cave tour, one of the people that went on the tour with me was Gabe from our worship staff, and he didn't want to zip line because that was too dangerous. But they began to give us our life jackets, which you're going to water. And then they hand us helmets. He's like, "Bro, why do we have helmets?" I was like, "It's fine." And so we start to make our way to the waterfall. We're walking down this walkway, and then we make a turn, and we're walking down a muddy slope that's wet. It's slippery. I'm holding on for dear life, and I wish I could say that was the worst part. But we got to the end of the muddy slope, and then we got into the water, and we're walking in probably knee-deep water. We get to this point, our tour guide climbs up on this rock, and by the time we're all up there, he's no longer there because he has jumped off the rock into the river where the waterfall is coming down. Current is pulling us. He's like, "Come on, it's fine." And so we keep going. We are soaked. We get to the waterfall. We enter this cave, and it was beautiful. The water is just pouring down over it. You hear the force of the waterfall. We get in there. We take our pictures, right? Proof that we did it, completely soaked. And then the tour guide, if it wasn't enough, he says, No, we're not done yet. We're actually going to go across the waterfall. So what do you mean across the water? He said, "There's a steel cable, and you'll feel it. You won't see, you'll feel it. And we're going to go between the rock wall and the water, right, that, plummet to your death type thing, and we're just going to hold on to the cable, and our feet will be on the rock, and we're going to shimmy to the other side." Well, we were all dumb enough to do it. We got to the other side. We went into another cave. It was amazing. We shimmied back across. We've joked about it to this day, but it was a really amazing experience, and I'm glad that I did it. But all that said, let me tell you one thing. When I climbed up on the rock, that was the point when we got up to the rock and we jumped off to approach the waterfall. Had I been by myself, that would have been the end of the line. Do you know why I kept going forward? Because there was a tour guide who assured me he had been there before, that he had led multiple groups to where we were going. Beloved, I don't know where you find yourself. I don't even know where you're headed. But if you trusted Jesus, I do know who's leading you. And it's not just that he's with you, as if that's not enough. He was there before you, and he will never, ever leave you. Listen to these words in Deuteronomy 31, 7 and 8. Moses, the Old Testament saint that we're familiar with, he had led the nation of Israel. He was their hero, and his life was coming to an end, and so he's appointing the guy who would take his place, and that guy's name was Joshua. And Moses shares these words in Deuteronomy 31, verses 7 and 8. It says, Moses then summoned Joshua and said to him in the sight of all of Israel, be strong and courageous, for you will go with this people into the land the Lord swore to give their fathers. You will enable them to take possession of it. That's encouraging. The Lord is the one who will go before you, check that out, he will be with you, and he will not leave you or abandon you. Do not be afraid or discouraged. What powerful words Moses would share with Joshua, that God would go before him, that he would be with him, and then he was never, ever going to leave him. But beloved, I don't know what you're dealing with. I know these are difficult days. I know there's uncertainty. But please hear me. If you have given your heart and life to Jesus, Jesus is not the light at the end of the tunnel. He's the light in the middle of the tunnel. He's not the distant, far-off hope that you've got to work and claw to get to. He's not the light at the end of the tunnel. He is the light in the tunnel that will get you through the tunnel. He was there before you. He is there with you, and he will never, ever leave you. Again, listen to these words, the encouraging words of the shepherd being with us. Again, David says, even when I go through the darkest valley, or again, as many of us know it, even though I go through the valley of the shadow of death. I want to point out what David says. Don't read so quickly you miss this. What did David say? Even though I go through. What did he? He didn't say, he said I go through. I'm not standing. I'm not stopping. I'm not sitting. I'm not settling. I'm definitely not staying. Even though I go through the valley of the shadow of death. Beloved, after almost 20 years of serving in the church, what breaks my heart is the number of Christians I have seen and the number of stories I have heard that they found themselves in the valley of darkness. And I don't make light of that. I've been there. It is difficult. But people who have placed their faith in Jesus find themselves in the middle of the valley of darkness. And somewhere along the way, they gave their ear to the enemy and they began to believe that where they were is where they would stay. And so they set up camp and they settled and they stayed and they sat and they stood because they thought the valley of darkness was a dead end. When if they would have continued to listen to the Lord, believing he was with them, even in the most unthinkable, most uncertain, most hurtful days, if we would continue to believe that he is with us, he will continue to lead us. Beloved, where you are is not your final destination. Even though I go through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. You are with me. Because the Lord was with David, David would say that he fears no danger, he fears no evil. He doesn't say that he was not oblivious to it. He doesn't say that he pretended that it wasn't there. He just said that he would not fear it, and he wasn't fearful of it because he knew that it was defeated. When you think about the way most of us learn this verse, even though I go through the valley of the shadow of death, think about that phrase, valley of the shadow of death. It's interesting, isn't it? You know, based on surveys, death is what most people are fearful of. And someone watching, now look, we have Jesus. We know that we don't have to fear death, but someone's watching and being a tough guy or a tough girl, I don't fear death, you know. That's not my greatest fear is snakes. No, it's not. You're scared a snake will bite you and kill you. Like, why my greatest fear is heights. No, you are scared you will fall from the heights to your death. Fear, by and large, is death, by and large, is the single greatest fear that most people have. But David does not say, even though I go through the valley of death, he goes, even though I go through the valley of the shadow of death. Death is but a shadow today because Jesus has removed its sting. If death is a snake, it's been defanged. David says, even though I go through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. I fear no danger because you are with me. Yes, beloved, physical death is in front of me. But I don't have to fear it because Jesus went before me to the cross and he paid my sin debt and he walked out of the tomb in victory and he has removed the sting of death. Jesus has gone before me. He is still with me. He is never going to leave me, and he has promised me life. Beloved, the dead end, beloved, the valley is not a dead end, but it's a doorway for what God has for us. The shepherd is with us in the valley. Here's a second point I want you to write down. The shepherd is also for us. He's not just with us. That's amazing, but he's also for us in the valley. The second half of verse 4 says, "For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me." Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Now, I fear that sometimes those of us that maybe have some familiarity with the Bible, we hear that. We've heard it over and over, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And we think of maybe Proverbs 13, that he who spares the rod of discipline hates his child. I've heard people actually teach this and say that the rod and the staff David speaks of, it was the Lord's discipline in his life, that David was in this valley of shadows as an act of discipline. Now, hear me. Beloved, yes, the Lord does discipline and correct his children. The problem with saying that's what this is that it doesn't follow the imagery David has already set up. We have to stay in context. David has drawn the imagery, the picture of a shepherd. Beloved, get this. The shepherd doesn't hit the sheep with the rod and the staff. He hits the predator. God disciplines, yes. But here's the truth. Never once in my life growing up did I ever tell my dad, "You know what, Dad, your belt comforts me." Man, I was having a bad day. I got a little, no. Did I need it? Unfortunately, yes. Did it correct some things? Absolutely. But did it ever comfort me? No. So what does it mean as David, using the imagery of the shepherd, knowing the shepherd is for us in the valley, what does it mean when David says, "Your rod and your staff, they comfort me"? Well, I've brought some illustrations for us today. When he speaks to the rod, as I was studying, most shepherds carried both of these. We could think it's the same thing. They're actually separate. The rod of the shepherd was most likely much larger than this, but this is what I got. And so the shepherd would carry a rod, and again, he wouldn't use the rod to beat a sheep. He would use it to beat the wolf. The rod was an offensive weapon to protect the sheep. I read how it wasn't just that they would beat the wolf, but they could actually use it almost like a javelin to throw it into danger ahead of them to scatter predators seeking to pick off the sheep. The shepherd carries the rod not to beat the sheep, but to protect them. And so he says, "Your rod, but also your staff comforts me." Now, many of us are familiar with a shepherd carrying a staff like this with the shepherd's crook at the end of it. But what does it mean when David says, "Your staff, your rod comforts me because it protects me. You are for me in the valley of shadows"? What does it mean for the shepherd to use the staff to protect his sheep? Well, as I was studying, I learned that there are three main ways a shepherd would use the staff to protect his sheep. One of those that seems the most obvious is with the shepherd's crook. He would reach out to sheep that were getting out of the herd, out of the sheepfold, maybe beginning to go their own way. Think of the one leaving the 99. And the shepherd would use the staff to bring the sheep back in. Second thing I learned is that the shepherd would use his staff to corral his sheep, check this out, to bring it in for intimate examination. Checking the sheep. Make sure that it was okay. And here's the last thing, this is the most powerful to me. The shepherd would also use the staff if a sheep had given birth and somehow was separated from the baby. Maybe the herd was moving, for whatever reason, if a baby sheep was separated from the mama, the shepherd would use the staff to come underneath that baby sheep, pick it up, and without touching it, return it to its mother, because had the shepherd touched it, the possibility of his scent being on the baby would be there, and thus the possibility of the mom rejecting the child. The shepherd protects his sheep with his rod and his staff. In the valley of shadows, the shepherd is not just with us, as if that wasn't enough. He is also for us. He is for us. Listen to these words, a few verses. Exodus chapter 14, verse 14. This is when Moses had led the nation of Israel out of slavery, and they were standing at the banks of the Red Sea with the Egyptian army bearing down on them. All hope is lost. And Moses says this, "The Lord will fight for you, and you must be quiet." Romans 8:31, Paul writes to the church at Rome, "What then shall we say about these things? If God is for us, who is against us? Who can be against us. David says that the rod and the staff of the shepherd comfort him because he knows the shepherd is for him. Beloved, we find ourselves in this life many times. We're in one of three positions. We're going into a valley, we're in the middle of a valley, or we just came out of one. But the good news is that we have a shepherd who promises to be with us in those times, to be for us in those times. And so let me leave you with a few practical things to think about. If you find yourself in a valley today, what do you do? If we find ourselves struggling, we feel like we're in the darkest of valleys, the valley of the shadow of death. What do? Here's the first thing. It's going to sound almost cliche, but I want you to write this down in your next steps. When you find yourself in the valley, draw close to the shepherd. I know that seems pretty obvious, but we must remember to draw close to the shepherd. Let me remind you of a truth that unfortunately, I don't think it's intentional, but I hear too many believers forget or twist. When it comes to the wolf, he's not afraid of the sheep. He's afraid of the shepherd, so stay close to him. Too many times I hear believers talk about having Satan underneath their foot. That's a terrible place to have the enemy. Let's keep him under Jesus' foot where he stays defeated. If you find yourself in a valley, don't wander off. Sometimes we go through the dark night of the soul and we think God owed us something like, well, if you love me, I do all these things for you, like we're trying to put him in our debt. And so then we walk away from God at the very time we need to stay close to him because we're in the valley of shadows. There's wolves there. They don't fear the sheep. They fear the shepherd because they know his power. If you find yourself in the valley, stay close to the shepherd. You say, okay, this is great, Chris. How do I stay close? The things we talk about week in and week out. What's your prayer life look like? One of the things I know many people are struggling with because of this pandemic is a lack of a routine. Everything's just gone crazy. It's happened in my home. We don't know up from down, day from night. Kids are staying up. Kids are putting parents to bed. It's crazy. But we've got to remember that we have to commit. It doesn't seem spiritual, but if you don't have a prayer time, you need to plan one and be disciplined. Say, why? Because that's when you connect with the Father. That's that conversation. That's that communion. That's when you're talking to the shepherd. When the shepherd brings you in for intimate examination, you commit time to prayer. This week, maybe you need to say, Monday through Friday, I'm praying at 9:30 a.m., at 10:30 a.m., at 7:30 a.m., at 8:30 p.m. Pick a time and just start praying. You say, Chris, I don't know what to pray. I've said it before. You just tell God how amazing he is in your prayer. You thank God for what he's doing, even in the midst of troubling days. You acknowledge his goodness in your life. You confess the things that you've done that have not been in alignment with him, and then you ask him for the needs that you have. Maybe it's not prayer. Maybe you have a healthy prayer life, but you never find yourself going to God's word. I've said this before, beloved. Don't be surprised when you feel you can't hear God's voice when you never go to God's word. He's just not speaking. No, you're just not listening. Maybe this is the week you make that commitment. I say it time and time again. If you don't know where to start, read the first 5 Psalms this week. 5 Psalms, 7 days. Pick up the book of Mark. It's a life story of Jesus. I'm excited to say, not this week, but next week, beginning Monday, August 10th. For the rest of the month of August, every morning I'll be going live from my home, having a quiet time, and you can join me for that time. But are you getting into the Word? Let me tell you something else that the shepherd has given us that helps us stay close. It's the gift of the local church. And you think to yourself, well, Chris, that's not much of a gift right now. I'm watching you on a screen. I confess, these are less than ideal days. Every Sunday I have the tension of an excitement of what the Lord's going to do with all those who watch. I have the celebration of the gift of technology. What if pandemic had hit before we could do these things? I have the reminder that God has saved over 110 people through online church. I have the story of Velma in Brooklyn who got saved. We'll probably never even meet her. And then I have the longing in my heart to see my family, knowing I'll come into a place with just a few people. And so, beloved, I say this. These are less than ideal days. We will celebrate technology. You'll never hear us say that the gathering is optional, though. If you don't know this, please know this and pray for us as leaders, our elders, and our staff. Every week, we are praying about the next best step. We haven't made any decision out of fear. We know that the shepherd is with us and for us. We make decisions to be a community partner, to protect our witness. We make decisions to be wise. But there will come a day that we will come back together. We don't believe it's an optional reality. It's a hallmark characteristic of the church. But until that day, as difficult as it is. Some people say it's easy. I don't know if I'll go back. I stay in my pajamas and my coffee. But I know it's not that way for everyone. I know it can be hard for moms getting their kids corralled into the living room and trying to get them to listen. I know it can be awkward to stand up from your couch and actually sing when Nidia encourages us to stand and sing. I know it can seem awkward, but in these difficult days, don't let the wolf win. In the midst of the valley of shadows, choose the local body of Christ. We have stuff for kids. Make sure your kids are watching stuff for students. This month of August, we're going to have stuff for women and for men. We'll have stuff about marriage and finances. We're trying to create more opportunities for you to connect. Take the next step in the family. You say, Chris, I don't even know what the next step is. Well, as you draw close to the shepherd, if connecting to the family is your next step, then I'm going to invite you to do something. I want you to text us at 97,000 and type the word BT family, all one word, include your first and last name. And we're just going to contact you, find out where you are. Maybe your next step is membership. Maybe it's serving or finding community. But don't forsake the gift of the local body. And if you're in the midst of the valley of shadows, stay close to the shepherd. It's his rod and his staff that will keep you. Another thing, if you find yourself in the valley and like draw close to the shepherd, this could seem cliche or even flippant, but take heart. One of the biggest things that the Lord has spoken to me these past 2 weeks as I have been just kind of marinating on the 23rd Psalm is that no matter what I face, I should take heart. If you are struggling today, beloved, take heart. If you're in the valley today, take heart. If you have given your life to Jesus and trusted him to be the Savior of your soul, take heart. Because when we take heart, we're reminded of a couple things. The first one we've heard before, and it's important. When we take heart in the midst of the valley, we're reminded that the God we serve is able to do the miraculous. Whatever you're facing, God can choose to rearrange that right now. We should pray with faith that God would calm the storms of our life, an image like the valley, that he will miraculously bring things about to calm those storms. But beloved, let me say this. What I have learned in my walk with Jesus is there have been times that God has done the unthinkable, unexplainable, unimaginable, and he has calmed the storm in my life. And I wish that's all I had to say, but I have also found out that sometimes in my life, God uses his unending power just like he does to calm storms, only he doesn't calm the storm, he calms the child. Because he's just not done with me yet in that valley. He is shaping me to be someone he wants to use. He is preparing me. And I much prefer the calming of the storm. But I'm thankful that when the storm rages, that my God can calm the child. Yesterday was a big day at my house. My oldest child celebrated his 14th birthday. It's odd. I know some of you have grown kids, but it's odd when you see your oldest getting older. Most likely, every year, August 1st will be a great celebration and a great reminder for me. Because as my oldest turned 14, my dad would have turned 74. And I thought of this text. And I thought of all the prayers that I prayed. A lot of you are aware of the fact that at the beginning of this calendar year, my dad passed away. And one thing that I didn't talk a whole lot about, even though I try to be transparent, is that my oldest brothers and I, my three older brothers, we dealt the last several years of my dad's life with his battle with dementia. And the storm raged around us, and I prayed that God would heal him and deliver him. As time went on, things got worse, and obviously it led to his passing from this life to the next. I want to say this, in the life of my father, God calmed the storm. He took him home. But in my life, he calmed the child. I wish it was always a fairy tale ending, but in some ways it is. Because he'll always be faithful to lead us through it. I don't know what the end result's going to be, but I pray that you would trust that no matter what it is, he's going to be faithful. He's going to calm that storm, or he's going to calm you. He's still leading. You can still trust him. He's not done shaping you. You can be excited for what he's preparing you for. Be encouraged and take heart, because the shepherd is with you, and he is for you. And beloved, I say this, never forget this truth, that the destination is always worth the difficulty. What he's leading you through is worth what he's leading you to. Again, in a moment of transparency, I've had a lot of time with the Lord that I've really grieved. And it's not, it's the lack of our gathering, but it's more than that, because some of you may remember that in 2016, we started the year with a sermon series called Banner Year. And we wanted the Lord to do certain things in the first 8 weeks of that year, and then there were some things that I specifically took to the Lord and I shared with our staff, I may have even shared with the church, I don't even remember anymore, but I've stayed with these things. And one of those is that in 2016, BT.Church existed as BT McAllen alone. I prayed that the Lord would let us expand our ministry beyond these walls. By God's grace, he's done that, as we're now one church in 4 physical locations. I also pray that the Lord would allow us to see 1,000 baptisms by the end of the year 2020. Now, listen to me. He can calm the storm. I don't know what's going to happen. We could have hundreds of baptisms to close the year. We're going to have a baptism party on the 20th of August. I don't know. I am not denying that possibility. What I'm saying is that it looks like we may not reach that goal. Now, hear me. What are we going to do? We're going to end up celebrating somewhere between 800 and 900 baptisms. But as a relatively, and this is good and bad, driven and goal-oriented person, I've had a hard time. I pray the Lord will allow us to see our physical, not including our online presence, our physical gatherings consist of over 3,000 people a weekend. I've grieved because the truth is that before we had to take the first online break due to COVID, we were really tracking on a growth trend. Again, who knows when we'll come out of this? Maybe in a few weeks or a few months we'll come out of this, and the effects of this in people's lives will draw them to the church to hear the good news of Jesus. I'm not saying it can't happen, but what I'm saying is it looks like it may not. I'd pray the Lord will allow us to construct our next building at the McAllen campus, a place for our students to gather. And now, there's been some altered plans, and God's done some other things with our multiple campuses, but that one hasn't happened. But those 2 middle ones, the baptisms and the number of people coming and hearing the good news, I've wrestled. It's been difficult. But the Lord reminded me this week that even though I walk through the valley of shadows, he's with me. And that the destination's worth the difficulty, and this is what I know. I know that when we come out of this and when we come back together, we're going to be stronger than we ever were. We're going to be better than we ever were. Some of you watching, maybe you may have been a part of BT since day one, and I'm so thankful for the stories that you have in the life of this church, but I hope you know this, the best days are nowhere behind us. They're out in front of us. Maybe those goals I had were just too small for God, and he needed to take me through some things. I don't know what your valley is. I don't know what your difficulty is. But I know the destination is worth it. Because even if that valley follows you to the day you breathe your last breath, you know what happens? It stays here when you go home. So take heart. Maybe for some of us, our next step is really going to be a step of obedience, because the truth is when we're in the valley of shadows is when we most need to surrender. This can seem almost like poor timing or insensitive, but maybe in this season of this pandemic, you have decided, maybe you're choosing not to give to the local church because you're just so uncertain of your job, or maybe you've lost your job. And I don't say this to be insensitive. I say this because I genuinely love you. There is no better time than the valley of shadows to trust the Lord, to ask him to open the windows of heaven. Maybe in the midst of the valley, you need to go back to, or for the first time, trust the Lord with your finances. Let him be sovereign in that area. Maybe it's an aspect of your marriage, or with your children, or in your singleness, in your job situation. Maybe for some, the chains of addiction have come back into your life, and you need to tell someone about that. You can reach out to us, email us. We want to follow up with you, to pray with you, and to give you some counsel. Maybe someone, you've given your heart and life to Jesus here just recently or years ago. But for whatever reason, you haven't been baptized yet. I want you to know this at BT, we don't believe baptism can save you. We don't believe baptism can keep you saved. And we don't believe that if you don't get baptized, you won't stay saved. You get that? Our relationship with God is not made right whether or not we get baptized. What baptism is, and why we prioritize it, is it's a declaration of faith. It's telling the world, I've decided to follow Jesus. I've received that free gift, and we think it's something that should be celebrated this calendar year, even in the midst of all the difficulties. We've seen over 110 people make that decision. No matter what happens, at minimum, we will have seen over 800 people make that decision since 2016. But maybe you're the next one who needs to make that decision. Again, August 20th, we've got a baptism party planned here at the McAllen campus in our pool. If you attend Alice, we'll find a pool in Alice, I promise you. We're going to gather at 6:30 p.m. that Thursday. We've had about 10 people that have requested baptism. Listen to me, if we have 100, we'll just have multiple baptism parties. We're going to practice social distancing. We're going to do everything we can. If we get 100 people text us, we're going to have baptism party August 20th to September 10th, whatever we got to do. But if you want to get baptized, we want to be a part of that. We want to celebrate that step. And so we need you to contact us. Text us at 97,000. Type the word BTBAPTISM, one word. Include your first and last name. We'll reach out to you. Those of you that have already texted us, I hope that you will respond as we're contacting you and be a part again of the August 20th baptism party. For the church family, know that we're going to record that. We'll make it available for you to see. And we're excited. So maybe obedience. But here's the last thing as we wrap up. I think it's possible that someone's watching. Maybe it's just one person. And you're like the 350 plus people that have already trusted Jesus this year. And what I mean by that is you find yourself anxiety rising, despair overwhelming you, discouragement, and uncertainty. And maybe specifically you have uncertainty with where you stand before God. Maybe this pandemic has caused you to question that. Maybe the hurricane caused you to question that. Maybe relational problems, loss of a marriage, loss of a loved one. You have questioned where you stand before God. You aren't sure if he's with you or for you. You're kind of hoping that you've got enough stuff in the scale to balance it. You'll never have enough stuff in the scale because it's not about you balancing it. It's about Jesus defeating it altogether. If you're uncertain if God is with you or if he's for you, I want to know that he is ready to be with you, that Jesus, the Good Shepherd, went to the cross to die for you. Why did he have to die for me, Chris? Because you couldn't take care of your sin problem on your own. You got a sin problem that you can't deal with. He paid your sin debt when he died on the cross, but he didn't stay dead. He walked out of the tomb, forever disarming the valley of death. It's only a shadow now. And when he defeated death, he made life available for all who would trust him. We place our faith in him. He's like the shepherd who reaches down and rescues that baby lamb and returns it to its mom. You see, when you place your faith in Jesus, you're presented to God the Father, only you don't smell like your stinky, sinful self. You smell like the Son who took your place and gave you his righteousness. If you don't know if you've made that decision to trust Jesus, I want you to know there's no greater decision. And I want you to know you can do that right now. Right now, you can trust Jesus to be your Savior. If you want to do that, I'm going to ask you to pray this prayer with me, understanding there's no power in the prayer. The Bible says there's power when we confess with our mouths and believe in our heart that Jesus Christ is Lord. And so I want you to pray this with me, but more than praying, believe this in your heart if you want to trust Jesus. Pray with me wherever you are right now. Dear God, I know that I'm a sinner. And I know there's nothing I can do about it. But I believe you did. I believe you sent your son Jesus to die on the cross for my sin. And Jesus, I believe you did that. I also believe you rose again, not just paying for my sin, but defeating death. And Jesus, I'm asking you to come into my heart. I trust you to be my Savior. Thank you for loving me. It's in your name I pray. Amen. I want you to know if you just prayed that prayer, your life is forever changed. If you believe those words in your heart, your eternity has been rewritten. You've gone from dark to light, death to life. You will never be the same, and you will never go through a valley without the Good Shepherd. And that's good news. At BT, we believe that every story should be celebrated. And so if you prayed that prayer and you believe that in your heart, I want you to contact us. Again, you know the number by now. It's 97,000. Text 97,000. BT Salvation, one word, first and last name. We're going to contact you this week. We've actually got a gift we want to mail to you. It's a book to help you start this new journey with Jesus. We want to come alongside you and celebrate this with you. I believe people are making this decision right now, and we want to celebrate that. I'm so thankful that God's continuing to do that which only the Good Shepherd can do, seeking and saving the lost. Well, BT family, I'm so glad you tuned in today from wherever you are. I hope you're encouraged. The truth that we have a good shepherd. He doesn't just lead us to valleys, he leads us through valleys. And no matter what valley you're in, it's not a dead end. It's not your final destination. It's a doorway to what God has for you. Would you pray with me that God would continue to calm the storm? Until he does, that he'll calm the child. I pray you join us next week as we wrap up the 23rd Psalm, continuing our God's Playlist sermon series. Make sure you're staying aware of the things we have available for your family online, and I so look forward to when we gather again, because I know the best is yet to come. That being said, would you join me wherever you are, at your home, at your office? Would you help me by declaring loud and proud the words of Ephesians chapter 3, verses 20 and 21. Don't be afraid, don't be ashamed. Here we go. Now to our Father, who is able to do above and beyond all that we ask or think, according to the power that works in us. To him be glory in the church and in Christ Jesus to all generations, forever and ever. Amen. Ephesians 3, 20 and 21. Now I pray this blessing over you, family. I pray the Lord would bless you and keep you. I pray to make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. I pray this week he overwhelms you with his nearness and his friendship as his countenance covers you. And beloved, this week, whether you go through the valley or you find yourself on the mountaintop, I pray that our great God would keep you with his perfect peace. BT family, you're loved, and we'll see you soon.